Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. I know what you're thinking. Lizzie, where did your books go? And today I'm going to be taking you through my Tudor TBR. That's all the books that I have on my TBR, which usually live on this shelf behind me, that are about the Tudors. I'm mostly making this video to shame myself into action because I love the Tudors. So I have a lot of books on the Tudors, but I rarely read them. So these are just the ones on my physical TBR. I have more on my Kindle, but I'm going to talk you through them. So yeah, they're roughly in chronological order, very roughly, in terms of who they're about, when they are set. But yeah, without further ado, let's get to it. There's quite a lot, so we'll be snappy. First up is Uncrowned Queen by Nicola Talis. This is about Margaret Beaufort, who is the mother of Henry VII. It's non-fiction, and she seems to be a very interesting woman to me. She was very powerful, but very much the power behind the throne, hence Uncrowned Queen. So yeah, I feel like she gets a bit of a bad rap in sort of films and TV shows and things. She's usually the sort of controlling mother or grandmother, but I am intrigued to learn more about her because obviously there weren't many options available for women at the time, especially powerful women. So yeah, that's first on the list. Next up is a fiction novel, and that is The Lady of the Ravens by Joanna Hixson, and this is about the lady-in-waiting to, I believe, Elizabeth of York. Yes, Elizabeth of York, who was the wife of Henry VII, who was the first of the Tudors. So very much a kind of look into that transitional period from the Plantagenets to the Tudors, the ends of the Wars of the Roses, and you know that I love a good historical fiction. So yeah, that's this one. Next up, I have 5/6 of a series. Just by that alone, you can probably guess who these next books are about. It's the 6 Tudor Queen series by Alison Weir. So these are all fictionalised historical novels about the wives of Henry VIII. So first of all, we have Catherine of Aragon, the true queen. She has the longest book, which should not be surprising because she was queen for longer than the rest of them put together. Then, of course, Anne Boleyn, A King's Obsession, green, of course. Then Jane Seymour, The Haunted Queen. Then Anna of Cleve, Queen of Secrets, and also shout out to not anglicising her name and using the German spelling here. And of the ones I've got so far, the final one is Catherine Howard, The Tainted Queen. I currently don't have Catherine Parr. I don't think it's out in paperback yet. But I haven't read any of them. I need a bell, like in Game of Thrones, to just go, shame, shame. I haven't read any of them. I am very excited to read this series because, especially judging by the length of the sort of shorter reigning queens, who had a bit less, especially in Anne of Cleve's case, a bit less drama in her life. I'm hoping that it's going to be not just about their time married to Henry VIII, but also about their lives before, and in the case of this one, after. The rest of them didn't really have an after. We're making good progress. Stack 1 is done. 2 more to go. The next one is also on the 6 Wives of Henry VIII, this time by Antonia Fraser, and this is a non-fiction book. I have read Alison Weir's The 6 Wives of Henry VIII, which I think was published within a year of this one. They were published very close together, so I don't expect to sort of come across new research or new facts in this one, but it will be interesting to read a different person's perspective on the 6 wives, and also just see who her favourite is, to be honest, because everyone has a favourite, let's be honest, we all have a favourite. We can't move on from Henry and his love life just yet, we've got a few more. And so the next one is a non-fiction book about Catherine of Aragon by Giles Tremlet. And again, so this is just non-fiction about Catherine of Aragon, a biography of her and her life. So yeah, I mean, she is such a fascinating character, such a powerful character, a powerful woman, and is so often remembered for a few years of a messy divorce rather than 20 plus years as a beloved monarch, rather than 15 or so years as a princess in her own right. So I'm hoping that this will kind of shed some light on those other years as well. This next one really intrigues me, and it's The Creation of Anne Boleyn by Susan Bordeaux. I will say the cover on Goodreads, which doesn't match this, has Anne Boleyn in like aviator shades, and I love it. And so instead of being a biography of Anne Boleyn, this one is it's a non-fiction book about how the sort of myth and story of Anne Boleyn has been created over the centuries, and how our modern idea of her has been shaped by centuries and centuries of basically historical propaganda. So I think this will be a really interesting one to kind of examine the way that history is crafted and the way that the stories of history are crafted, while also hopefully giving us a bit more insight into who she was. We can move on from Henry and his tumultuous love life now onto some of his relatives. So the next one, it's more Alison Weir. It's The Lost Tudor Princess by Alison Weir, and this is about Margaret Douglas, who was Henry VIII's niece. So, I mean, it's called The Lost Tudor Princess, and I know very little about her, so I feel like that is fitting, and it's also why I want to read this book. Apparently she was imprisoned in the Tower of London 3 times. So yes, the Tudors always bring the drama. That's why we love them. So lots of drama in this one. We're going to stay on the non-fiction train as we move on to the next generation of Tudors. And this is Elizabeth by David Starkey. I think its full title is Elizabeth the Apprentice Years, as it is specifically about her childhood and youth. Elizabeth I had quite a traumatic childhood by many accounts. Obviously, having your mother beheaded by your father and then going through 4 stepmothers in the time of like 13 years, all while your father denies your birthright, must be quite stressful. But even after Henry VIII died and Mary I came to the throne, she did not have an easy time of it at all. So I think this is going to be a really sort of enlightening book as to what she went through and maybe how that shaped her into the iconic queen that we know of today. A slightly broader perspective now as we look at Elizabeth and her siblings and one of her cousins in Children of England by, you guessed it, Alison Weir. And this is again non-fiction, and it looks at the 4 heirs that were left behind when Henry VIII died. So Mary I, Elizabeth I, Edward VI and Lady Jane Grey. I did read her fiction novel about Lady Jane Grey a couple of months ago and really enjoyed it. So I'm intrigued to learn some more about her, and also about the sticky situation that was left when Henry VIII died, and then again when Edward VI died. We're so close to the end. We're nearly there. How am I going to read all these? Elizabeth I obviously brings us loads of drama, and she's best known for her feud with Mary Queen of Scots. So the next book is Elizabeth and Mary by Jane Dunn. I've never read any Jane Dunn before. This is again non-fiction and is about the feud between these 2 cousins. And by all accounts, they didn't really meet very much. They were, of course, rivals for the throne. And I think it's so rare in history, especially in Western history, that we see 2 women being absolute rivals for so much power in this way. So I think it's something that is often romanticised a bit, but will be very interesting to learn some more about. Staying in Scotland for the next one, and it is Mary Queen of Scots by Jenny Warmold. This is a slightly older one. It was first published in the late 80s but has been revised a couple of times since then. And a bit like the Anne Boleyn one, I think this is sort of debunking a lot of the myths around Mary Queen of Scots and putting the truth of her story and her character to the forefront. I think a common theme through a lot of these books, and why Tudor history is so fascinating to many of us, is that there are so many powerful women in this period, and this is another one who I can't wait to read about. Speaking of powerful women, what better way to end this list than with Bess of Hardwick by Mary S. Laval. This is a biography of one of my favourite people in all of history. Bess of Hardwick was a very, very ambitious woman. She married, I think, 3 times, maybe 4, and managed to get richer every time she was widowed. One of her husbands died in very mysterious circumstances, but I think it was concluded it was his brother, not her, who poisoned him. So lots of drama, but she absolutely made her own way in the world. By the time she died, was one of the richest people in the country. She also built some of the most famous stately homes in the Midlands as well. So I'm so excited to read this because she's such a fascinating person who led an incredible life and used her own skills and cunning and wit to make her own way in the world, in as much as you could as a Tudor woman. So making her own way definitely included making some very good decisions in who she married and when. But she used all of that to her advantage to create basically a sort of small business empire in as much as that existed at the time. She was a shrewd businesswoman. She loved art and wanted nothing more than to impress her best mate, Elizabeth I. That is my Tudor TBR. So there are, I think, 16 books there. My plan, to make myself read them, because I really want to, is next year I'm going to be giving myself a Tudor challenge where every month I have to read at least one book from my Tudor shelf. So if you would like to join me on that, then please do. Closer to the new year, I'm going to make a Storygraph challenge for it. So if you also love the Tudors, then you can join me on that little annual challenge, or year-long challenge rather. But yeah, if you are interested in the Tudors, let me know if any of these books interest you, or if you have more recommendations to make my TBR even bigger, then do let me know. Thank you so much for watching. All of these books are in the description, as are all my social medias, so you can go and say hello to me in other places. I will see you next time. Bye!